Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master. And before we get into today's episode, smash that like button, make sure that you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out on our end with the YouTube algorithm, but also we love to hear from you guys. We have an awesome community here, and that's thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, having said all that, let's get into it. The prologue to today's game session starts on Earth K in the year 1929, back when Arthur was far weaker than he is now. Admiral Byrd leads an expedition to Antarctica, and with him are Arthur, as well as a knockoff of Sherlock Holmes that we named Doyle MacArthur, as well as a knockoff of Hugo Danner by the name of Wiley Phillips. The name of our Sherlock knockoff was meant as an homage to the creator of Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And likewise, the name of our Hugo Danner knockoff was meant as an homage to Philip Wiley, the author of the novel Gladiator, which inspired Siegel and Schuster when they went on to create Superman and kick off the comic book genre as we know it. For anybody who is unfamiliar with Hugo Danner, his whole deal was that his father was a science professor who lived in Colorado in the late 1800s. He discovered something in insects that he called alkaline radicals, which were supposedly what enabled a flea to jump so far, or what gave a housefly its quick reflexes. This whole thing seems to have inspired Spider Man years later, in that Peter Parker also had the proportionate strength and durability of a spider. But unlike Peter Parker, our Hugo Danner knockoff also has insect like instincts, which makes him far more dangerous. And while in civilization, he basically gets a bonus to his willpower saving throw versus this primitive behavior. But when you take him into the wild, those saving throws get harder and harder. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Point being, the party goes on an expedition to Antarctica. It's Thanksgiving, and it is 130 degrees below zero here. Sled dogs play with penguins while the explorers document everything with their black and white cameras. They make camp for the night, and the next day, which is November 29th of 1929, the party goes further towards the center of Antarctica. As their plane flies towards the center, there are mountains in their way. To get high enough to make it over those mountains in this thin air, they're forced to jettison supplies, which means that now they're low on food and other much needed provisions, which makes them worry what even is there to eat in a place like this, where nothing ever grows. Going for help would be hard because the gas in their vehicles is beginning to freeze. Finally, though, they reach the savage land. And here they find plenty to eat, and it's so hot that the gasoline in the plane begins to thaw out. So they decide to stay here for a while, and eventually they discover a gigantic hole in the ground that is bigger than a football field. This is the mouth of a massive cave system. So the PCs go down the hole, and when they come out, they are in the hollow earth, also known as Skartaris. They begin to explore this lost world, only to come face to face with something that we call the Draconian Army. And as a brief aside, I based my Draconians on the Axis powers in the sense that they're not all the same. Just as in real life, the Axis consisted of separate races like German people, Italian people, and Japanese people. Likewise, the Draconians are actually made up of different reptilian species. Some of their commanders are actual dragons in the Dungeons and Dragons sense. They fled into the Hollow Earth to escape extinction in the Middle Ages and Renaissance time periods. Likewise, some of those dragons reproduced with human women, creating half dragon hybrid offspring. Another species in the Draconian army are chameleon folk, a race of reptoids who have the same power as mystique. This allows them to take on the appearance of any human being. Point being, when the player characters arrive in Skartaris, they attract the attention of the Draconians. And some Hulk sized Draconians who are strong enough to lift a tank over their head ambush the party. And these guys are actually even tougher than Wiley Phillips is. So soon they overwhelm the PCs and take them as prisoners. The PCs are then placed in a dungeon where they meet a knockoff of Tarzan named Ferox, aka Rex Burroughs II. Introductions are made, and the Sherlock knockoff asks where Burroughs came from. So Rex explains that all around the world there are smaller tunnels that lead into the Hollow Earth, and one of these caves was discovered in the jungle where he lives with his wife and son. Much like the PCs, he had explored it and then gotten himself captured. Also, here in the dungeon is a Sasquatch who was loosely based on Ukla the Mock from Thundar the Barbarian. With him is a woman called Genoa the Beautiful. She is extremely hot and has raven hair, and she is based on Princess Ariel, who also was a character from Thundar the Barbarian. And when Wiley Phillips sees her, he has to make a willpower saving throw, which he fails. So those insect urges get the better of him, and he feels strongly compelled to try to reproduce with her, which, by the way, she is not into. So Arthur steps in and does his best to defend her from Wiley. But Wiley wins the fight. Despite the fact that he nearly killed Arthur and Genoa is defenseless now, the fight changed what sort of mood he was in. He's no longer really in the mood for love. Instead, now he just wants to establish dominance and kind of be the alpha male in this situation. On the Draconians end of things, they want their prisoners to work. What they do not want is for the PCs to try to kill the other PCs. So the Draconians take part in breaking up that fight. Afterwards, Genoa nurses Arthur back to health and is attracted to him. So that night, under cover of darkness, they laid together, and what nobody knew at the time was that she conceived not one, but two sons. The next day, the PCs come up with an escape plan, and this one actually works. They manage to escape, but the Draconians hunt them down using their keen senses. They capture the PCs and they throw them back in the dungeon. But as each player character compares notes, they all think they were gone for a different amount of time. Some think it had been about a week since they escaped, while others think it was only an hour. So they all agree that the passage of time in the Hollow Earth is messed up for some unknown reason. More time passes, though not enough for Genoa's morning sickness to kick in yet, and eventually the player characters escape once again. During this escape, though, something tragic happens. Wiley wants Genoa all for himself, so he grabs one of the female chameleon folk and literally threatens to tear her to pieces unless she uses her powers to assume the appearance of Genoa. Realizing that Wiley not only can, but will do this, the chameleon woman complies. And as soon as she looks like Genoa, Wiley knocks her out. And even while unconscious, she still retains her current human appearance. During all the chaos, Arthur sees this female reptoid, mistakes her for the real Genoa, and carries her to safety. They get to the surface with Doyle and Rex, and they hurry to the plane. By now, the gasoline has completely thawed out, so they start the aircraft and they leave. On the flight back to the base in Antarctica, when the false Genoa wakes up and they realize she's a chameleon, Arthur demands that everybody turn the plane around, but Rex says that Wiley will kill him. Or, because of the time thing, it'll be 100 years later and Genoa will be long dead. So the expedition ends in tragedy and Arthur is heartbroken. Which brings us to the main plot, which takes place in the modern day, almost 100 years after the prologue took place. Brad Williams, aka Killfrost, is an original character who has the powers of Shazam. He's been journeying into the Hollow Earth to hunt various D&D monsters. While here, he encounters a young man named Fang who looks a lot like Arthur, but with long hair. Killfrost asks Fang who his mother is, and Fang says his mom is known as Genoa the Beautiful. So Killfrost asks who his father is, and Fang explains that it's complicated. But his mother is a slave who is quote unquote owned by a man who goes by Lord Wiley. Fang's twin brother Talon then shows up, but whereas Fang has long brown hair, Talon has long black hair. But they both have Arthur's bright blue eyes. Killfrost says he has someone that he thinks they should meet, so he carries them and flies up the long metallic passageway to what used to be Mansfield, Ohio. At the top, there's a large mechanical door shaped kind of like a camera iris. On the walls here, just below the door, are offices where Imperial officers are stationed. Brad tells them that he has two guests that he wants to bring to the surface world. And when the officers see Fang and Talon, they immediately notice the resemblance to their emperor. So they let them through after they go through something akin to a high-tech X-ray machine. This checks, among other things, to make sure that the people coming to the surface are not more of these chameleon men. Point being, Brad flies Fang and Talon to this weird island in the sky. The bottom of the island is made of rough-hewn stone, while the top is covered in exotic vegetation and flowers from all around the world. High-tech palace towers and parapets rise up out of this sort of jungle area and shine in the sun. And when Fang and Talon asks what this place is, they're told that this is the castle of Arthur, and that is a name that their mother told them about. So Killfrost leads them into the main chamber where Arthur sits on a throne. Several of Arthur's men are here talking to him about various emergencies taking place right now on several alternate Earths. But when Fang and Talon enter, Arthur sees them and immediately notes the family resemblance, so he tells his people that he needs a minute. Likewise, Killfrost sees Powerhouse and Powerhouse's wife, the Earthborn Angel of Fire, and the two of them have recently been granted immortality by Arthur. So Killfrost chats with them, giving Arthur some alone time with Talon and Fang. Arthur greets them and asks who they are. They tell him their names, and he is quick to ask who their mother is. So Talon says her name, and Arthur looks like he just got punched in the stomach. He says he knew her, and immediately asks if she's alive and well. Talon says she's alive, but he doesn't say she's well. Fang explains that she quote unquote belongs to Lord Wiley, and Arthur's eyes narrow. He is not thrilled that Wiley yet lives. Also in this room, by the way, are Water Bear aka Tari Gardner, another daughter of Arthur. She is my daughter's favorite character to play in our role playing game, and she too is now an immortal. Also, here is a brand new character who has yet to be named, actually. He's an immortal that my son rolled up, and while everybody else pretty much looks like they did in life, my son wants this new guy to look like a living disco ball. So he's shaped kind of like a bald man, kind of like the Silver Surfer, but his entire bodily surface is then covered in those little small square mirrors. And then on top of that, he's wearing those 1980s sunglasses. And instead of having lenses, they have those like slats across the eyes, sort of like shutters. Anyways, the whole point of this character is supposed to be that he's like the living embodiment of a party. But something happened in real life, kind of minor, and my kids ended up having to leave. So their characters more or less just make these really brief cameos. And the minor family emergency that happened at the time kind of disrupted the game for a little bit. So after that, when we finally all sat back down to the gaming table, where we picked up was that Fang and Talon are both granted immortality by Arthur, their true father. And they use their seemingly unlimited teleportation ability to go to where Wiley Phillips is. And he's a big fish in a small pond, so to speak. He lives in a fort made up of vertical logs that have all been kind of like sharpened on the top and are held together by heavy ropes. He has a large wooden throne that is against one of the fort's inner walls. So we roll initiative, and Talon is the fastest, then Fang, and then last is Wiley. So without wasting any time, Talon casts an AD&D spell called Sphere of Ultimate Destruction, which does 42 points of damage, leaving Wiley with 73 hit points left. Next up is Fang, who casts a lightning spell, inflicting 36 points of damage, leaving Wiley with 37 hit points left. On Wiley's turn, he tries to punch Fang with his super strength, referring to Fang as the weakest of all of his supposed sons, and as such, he also calls him the biggest disappointment. On Talon's turn, he casts Arcane Crush, which does 34 points of damage, leaving Wiley with only 3 hit points left. And on the final turn, Fang questions just who the weak one really is by headbutting Wiley, doing 15 points of damage, taking him down to negative 12 hit points. Wiley's last moment is spent with a shocked look on his face, matched only by the looks that Wiley's actual biological sons all have, seeing their quote unquote weak older brother take out their dad. Which brings us to the epilogue. That night, after cleaning house, Fang and Talon take their mother to the surface world, and for the first time in her life, she sees the stars and she weeps. Arthur finds her and holds her in his arms and begs her forgiveness. He says honestly that he did look for her on many occasions over the years, but he was never able to find her. He wonders if it has something to do with that time thing. Like maybe she'd skipped over those moments to instantly arrive at this point in time. And as their parents make up for lost time, Fang and Talon begin to explore the surface world and learn about the high-tech setting that is Earth K, which was where we decided to end this one. There was an idea that we kicked around at the end of the game session, which is the clone spell from AD&D, which the Wrath of the Immortals box set mentions specifically. It says that an immortal is better at casting spells than mortals are, and it mentions that they can do things with the clone spell that you can't normally do otherwise. So the idea that we had was for the immortal characters to go back in time, clone Genoa, and make sure none of the bad stuff Wiley did ever actually happened to the real Genoa. The idea was for it to have happened to a clone that they created, and then when the spell expires, the clone just ceases to exist. But on my end, I never run AD&D. And on the rare instances when I do, we always avoided magic because we were confused by the game mechanics. So the games that we did run were always something more akin to like Braveheart, where it was more of like a historically inspired kind of a thing with less spells and sorcery. Likewise, Brad and Damien love 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, but they are very unfamiliar with AD&D. So this was sort of us dipping our toes in the water and actually playing using the old D&D rules from the 80s and the early 90s. And one reason that we did this was so that all of us could kind of learn together and teach each other what the immortals are actually capable of. The long-term plan then is to have a solid understanding, then convert the immortals into the game systems that we normally play in and run them alongside our superhero characters. So, that said, while we had these ideas about cloning and time travel, we decided to kind of put a pin in it for right now until we have a better grasp of what the characters can and cannot do. But for sure, none of us likes the idea that poor Genoa was stuck in Skartaris for almost 100 years at the hands of a villain. So we all agreed that we will come up with something later to make sure that didn't actually happen. So, that said, since we ended it with the promise that she was going to be safe and sound, that left everybody feeling pretty good about this game session. We hope that you guys enjoyed hearing about this game session too. If so, as always, smash the like button, make sure you're subscribed, and leave a comment. And from all of us here at the longest running superhero role playing game on earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.